Good morning, friends. Welcome to Ruth Reacts to Books. I'm your host, Ruxie, Ruth McGouth, and welcome to Season 2, Episode 12. Today, I am going to be reviewing the book Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. Before I get started, since this is one in a large series, I'll talk a little bit about the series, and then I will read the inside of the cover. Don't worry, I don't give spoilers. And then I will talk about what I liked about the book, what I didn't like. I'll tell you about the food and about my nails that I connected to this book. So this is a book that came out in this series. It's the first book in the series is this one called The Hunger Games. It's also a movie that you might have seen. And The Hunger Games is a book about Katniss Everdeen, who takes place in the future. We think it's the United States-ish, where there's been some kind of catastrophic thing that's happened, and there's the capital city, and then there's the districts, and every year the capital causes the districts to give tributes to these terrible, and the tributes are children from the 12 districts, and they have to give children to fight in their war games, and then the children fight to the death, and then a victor emerges, and the last person living is the victor. And so the Hunger Games, and then Catching Fire and Mockingjay are the first trilogy that tells the story of Katniss Everdeen. And then this is a picture of her Mockingjay pin, which is a kind of an important part of the story that weaves its way through. So that's the first trilogy that was released. And then a few years later after that, she came out with this book, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which went way back in time and told the story of the bad guy, President Snow, way back in the day, kind of went back to the 10th Hunger Games. So way back in the day, told the story about the 10th Hunger Games and sort of gave an introduction to how President Snow became President Snow and how he got involved with the Hunger Games in the first place, way back when he was a student. So before he was the president, before he was kind of as bad as he was. So that's sort of the etymology of how we got to where this recent book was written. And so the most recent book is also a prequel. Sunrise on the Reaping goes back to tell the story. So in the Hunger Games, Katniss Everdeen is from District 12. And District 12 has only ever had one previous victor or two previous victors, but there's only one that's still alive when Katniss Everdeen goes to the Hunger Games, because the other one is like legendary and is not alive anymore. And so this is about the one other one who is still alive, Haymitch Abernathy. So I really like this book. I gave it 4.75 stars, so it didn't quite get to 5, but really close. And I'll tell you more about that. So let me read the back, and then we'll get into it, okay? And don't worry, like I said, I don't give spoilers. So, when you've been set up to lose everything you love, what is there left to fight for? As the day dawns on the 50th annual Hunger Games, fear grips the districts of Panem. This year, in honor of the Quarter Quell, twice as many tributes will be taken from their homes. Back in District 12, Haymitch Abernathy is trying not to think too hard about his chances. All he cares about is making it through the day and being with the girl he loves. When Haymitch's name is called, he can feel all his dreams break. He's torn from his family and his love, shuttled to the capital with 3 other District 12 tributes, a young friend who's nearly a sister to him, a compulsive oddsmaker, and the most stuck-up girl in town. As the games begin, Haymitch understands he has been set up to fail, but there is something in him that wants to fight, and have that fight reverberate far beyond the deadly arena. All right, so what I obviously liked a lot about this book because I gave it 4.75 stars. We do meet Haymitch in the Hunger Games, so we know a little bit about him. For the most part, he's a drunk in that book, so we don't know a huge amount about him. We do learn a little bit about him in that book. We learn just a tiny bit about his Hunger Games So we know like a little tidbits about how he won, but we don't know the ins and outs about who he was or anything. So I loved getting to know like the Haymitch before he had been through massive amounts of trauma, which obviously going through any kind of match to the death would cause a massive amount of trauma. So that was really nice to get to know him before all of that had happened, kind of understanding why he was the way he was. We also got to learn the backstories of some of the other victors that we met. So we meet in Catching Fire, which is the second in the Hunger Games trilogy. We meet quite a few of the other victors. So when you win a Hunger Games, you're called the one person that is the winner is called the victor of the Hunger Games. And so we meet quite a few of those in the second Hunger Games book, and we get to know some of them quite well. And so we meet some of those folks here in Sunrise on the Reaping, and we get to know a little bit more about some of the ones that we really came to love in Catching Fire. And so that was really cool and interesting to know that. Of course, some of it was quite heartbreaking too, but I mean, heartbreaking is not always bad. She's a good writer. She knows how to catch our heartstrings. So that was nice. That was really cool. We got to meet some new characters who we came to love. You know, my son, who is quite obsessed with these books right now, he really enjoys a good death scene that pulls at your heartstrings. So there was definitely some of those in the book. So yeah, it was well written, I thought. It definitely made me cry quite a few times. So it had some good, well written parts that pulled at our heartstrings. The things that I didn't like that made me like not give it the full 5 stars, I do think she went just a little bit overboard in trying to connect it to like all the other books. Like there was maybe 1 or 2 things that didn't need to be there, because there was a lot of things that were there. And I just felt like we maybe went 1 or 2 things overboard. We just could have pulled back slightly. And then there is quite a lot of Edgar Allan Poe quotes, especially in the last chapter. And I felt like I did not read this to read Edgar Allan Poe. If I wanted to read Edgar Allan Poe, I could go get an Edgar Allan Poe book. And I feel, especially for like the younger readers who are reading this, when they get to that part, it's quite a lot in the last chapter. They're going to be quite confused, and I have a coworker who read it and she just skipped all of that. And that's not because she's young. That's because she doesn't want to read that part. You know, we're here to read the part that Suzanne Collins is writing. We're not here to read what Edgar Allan Poe wrote, because we've all read that already in school. So I don't know. For me, that was it took away, like when I did read all the words, and it just took away from the book for me. And so that part really turned me off a little bit at the end. So, but all in all, really good book. Really enjoyed it. Highly recommend. I mean, I read it in like a weekend. It was so good. I read it as like in 2 days, because I couldn't put it down. So I highly recommend it to everybody. And the food that I gave you is gumdrop cookies. If you read the book, you'll know why. Don't worry, it's not poisoned. Gumdrop cookies. So there's a recipe for that. And then my nails. Let me show you those and we'll tell you why. So I have like a black nail underneath called Up Till Midnight. And then on the top, I have a gold, coming up rose gold is the color. And so in the districts, they all have colors that align with the districts. And so the color for District 12 is black, because they're like coal mining district. And then in the Hunger Games series, Katniss Everdeen, we call her like the girl on fire. And so when she gets there, she actually has like a gold thing that turns to gold. Now, they didn't necessarily have that when Haymitch was there, but he did have, you can see on the front cover, this gold thing that he took into the arena with him. So I kind of connected the gold on top of the black in honor of that. Oh, and another thing I liked, we get to learn about the history of so this is the pin in the Hunger Games. This is the Mockingjay pin that Katniss ends up wearing, and we get to learn where that came from and who originally owned that in Haymitch's book. So that was cool. So yeah, lots of cool stuff. Highly recommend. Hope everyone's having a good week. We had some great protests yesterday. I hope everyone was able to get out there who wanted to be participating. We got to fight for our rights. So love you all. Have a great week, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.